Good morning. A Christian couple are threatening to take their 6-year-old son's school to a tribunal because another pupil sometimes comes to class as a boy and other times as a girl wearing a dress. Nigel and Sally Rowe have withdrawn their son from his Church of England primary, saying the authorities had acted without due regard to the best interests of pupils, had failed to consult other parents and had not respected their rights to bring up children with biblical values. 2 years previously, they'd taken his 8-year-old brother out of class when a pupil came out as transgender. Let's talk now to Nigel and Sally Rowe, and also with us Jane Fay, a campaigner for LGBT rights who transitioned in her 50s. And just to say, we're not naming the primary school deliberately to protect the various children involved. Nigel and Sally Rowe, thank you very much for talking to us. Thanks for coming on the programme. What were your concerns?
Yeah.
But sorry, I've lost the earpiece. Sorry.
I've lost as well.
What were your concerns?
Our concerns were our child came home from school one day saying, "Daddy, I'm confused." I said, "There's a boy in his class which is sometimes coming as a boy and sometimes coming as a girl," and we were concerned about that because it's very confusing. And how do children deal with that? And let's remember that these are primary school children. This is 6 years of age, and we're worried what effect that can have on the other children, and how they have to deal with that. That was what our concern was.
And what were you worried about? What were you afraid of in terms of the effect on your son or the other children in the class?
Well, I think it was the advice that was given to the school we feel was insufficient, and that, well, firstly, that the child that had gender confusion shouldn't be put in a public domain like a school. To begin with, they need to be given proper care and to have the proper assessments and advice from professionals before it just goes in. And for the other children, it's imposing that the boy that they once were friends with a boy's name, they've now got to start treating them and calling them by a girl's name and changing the pronoun from he to she and things like that. And we feel that is quite difficult. They're confused, and what if they get it wrong? Will there be punishment? This is our concern.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably you don't know if the 6-year-old who was coming one day dressed as a boy and one day dressed as a girl had the professional assessments. And in terms of the effect on your children and the others in the class, kids at that age are really adaptable, aren't they?
They are, but they're also very vulnerable.
And I think... Sorry to interrupt. Vulnerable to what?
We're vulnerable to all sorts of things that go on in a classroom, and we need to be protecting them and safeguarding them. Well, with this, they know that this child is a boy, but they are being forced to pretend that they are not a boy, that they're a girl, and that's quite hard for a child to get their head around. I know that there are other parents that were concerned that their child came back sort of unhappy. It's like, oh, my friend's different now and confused. I think it's in this forum of just, they're just 6-year-olds.
Sure, no, I understand.
And we feel like it's a big thing. It's got a lot more implications for the child in question and all the children in terms of bullying, changing room issues, what happens when puberty kicks in, and that this needs to be discussed properly, and policies need to be put in place to protect all children so that they are in a safe environment.
I'm still confused about what it is you were wanting to protect your son and the others in his class from.
Well, it could be emotional stress. It could be things like that. It could confusion. That's what we're protecting the children from. Is a situation where they're in confusion, they don't understand, and also, as Sally mentioned, that a child can get chastised for addressing the child in the wrong way. But you see, this is very complex, isn't it?
Did that happen? Did anybody get chastised for addressing this fellow pupil in the wrong way?
Not that we're aware of.
No.
Don't know.
No.
And who was...
But the letter that we received was very staunch, as like, if you don't, it's transphobic behaviour, and I think that's really harsh.
Yeah, yeah.
And also now you're opening the door as well for your 6-year-olds, you know, to come dressed as different things even, you know. It's like, where do you draw the line? Where are the boundaries? We need to really think carefully about this, because it does have long-term effects, and we don't know that. Are we, you know, it's kind of like an experiment. Let's see how it goes, when really it needs to be done in a private domain, not in the public domain of a school. And we're talking about 6-year-olds here. We're not talking about adults. Adults can make their own decision. They're mature enough, and they're to make a decision about this. But these children, are they emotionally able to make a decision this great? And it just to be out there.
I think it's really important to understand that, you know, all the children are valued and loved and cared for, and we really do care. You know, it's very difficult for the parents of the other children who are suffering from, you know, gender dysphoria, that sort of thing. So it needs to, as Sally said, it needs to be an environment where they can be cared for and understood. It's not a case of attacking or anything like that at all.
It doesn't sound like you're being very understanding.
No.
No, we are. We really love the families that are involved. We're good friends. We're
there's no animosity.
But then on the other hand, if we're in a democratic society where all views and beliefs and thoughts are listened to, but we feel like we can't speak out. Now, I know there's a lot of families that are in the same situation as us, where they wouldn't feel comfortable with their child being in this situation. And it's very... And why can't they speak out? Because they're just labelled transphobic or hateful, and that is far, far from the case. We have so much love for these and compassion, and we know that parents want to do the very best for their children. They want them to be happy.
Have you ever...
You know, and our children weren't happy.
Yeah. Have you met a trans child, or a child that one day comes to school dressed as a boy and then perhaps the next as a girl? Have you talked to such a child?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we go in regularly into school. We know the family. We know these children. You know,
we're much part of the school.
There's two children here. The one that's now 8 that changed to be a girl, and with a girl's name is now 8. We know the family. We know the children. Yeah. That personally, we have love for them, and we treat them with respect and care and love. But we just feel that we need to be an open debate about this. We need to really think about what is going on in schools and how we impose these things on very, very young children. Okay, is this the right environment?
And there needs to go through a consultation process as well.
Yeah,
I think
we
it's
weren't
wrong.
Consulted.
I think it's wrong that the school suddenly just comes in and then says, this is how it is today. I think the parents of the school need to be consulted. And various other, the LEA and the Church of England as well. They need to be consulted first. There needs to be dialogue before just suddenly expecting everybody just to accept this situation. It's about consultation.
Yeah. Let me bring in Jane Fay, who's an LBGT activist, campaigner, and transitioned in her 50s. Hello, Jane. Do talk to Sally and Nigel Rowe.
Yes, well, just straight across through the magic of television.
Yes.
Sorry, Nigel. Sally? Yes.
Sally, yeah.
Sally, yeah. What gender are your children?
They're both boys.
How do you know that? Isn't that a bit of an adult decision, which you, I think, just said?
Because they have the genitals to show they were born as boys.
It's all about genitals, is it?
No, it's not. No,
well, then how do you know if you've...
Well, you can see that. Well, if you can even look, even from a scientific point of view, you can see the difference between male and females. Their traits between male and females is within our DNA.
So
and a boy, clearly, when you go to any hospital and someone is born, they'll lift up and say it's a boy or it's a girl. And
so it's what you are assigned at birth. For a trans child, they can't possibly know until they're 18, but your children magically know at age 6. Is that what it is?
No, you're kind of putting a totally...
Well, you've just said that you don't know. It's an adult decision about gender.
No, so it's not an adult decision. It's physical. It's physical. Okay. You can see it.
But if a child is confused, that's a mental... Right.
Can I just add that I had this with Victoria earlier. There does seem to be a bit of confusion because there are 2 children involved, aren't there?
That's right.
One of them is 8. The school handled this very well. That child is transitioning and you get on with them, although I notice you disrespect them by calling them he. And the other child has just recently started, yes? And you're worried about bullying.
Well, the other child...
You said you're worried about bullying?
There could be cases of bullying, yeah.
So you're
I mean,
worried your
other
children might bully this child?
No, our
not
children,
at
because
all.
we've taught
So
our
who
children
might?
to respect and love others, regardless of who or what they are. That is very much part of our Christian values. You love your neighbour as yourself.
Just my own experience, both with my own family and with with trans children, is that the children bullied tend to be those children. And they
That's
tend to
very
be
sad.
bullied because parents take the sort of view that you take. Very much, when parents tell their child not to accept another child, their children go out and bully.
Well, that's wrong, and
far
that's
from the
very
truth. And
sad.
we've got a clear example of that with our child. He had his 6th birthday party, and he said he wanted to include all the class, and he was even made a thing on make sure you invite this particular child who sometimes dresses as a girl and sometimes dresses as a boy. He shows love and compassion and care to every child in his class, and that's what we've brought him up to be, and he's amazing.
What I do know, having spoken to the parents of the 8-year-old this morning, which is not the child that you're talking about, that child went to bed last night scared. They said they didn't feel safe because of what you're doing, because you can't get a voice on national TV. This is not national... Oh, this is national
But
TV,
should they be aware of this? This is
we don't want the
a dialogue, because we don't even want the children involved in this. It is an adult
You
discussion.
don't want this dialogue that the child can hear, and do you
No.
expect the child not to be
No, not
watching
at all.
the news, not to be watching Victoria, not to be watching
No.
Sky?
Well, our children certainly are.
No, they aren't.
We don't want to.
We haven't brought our children into this.
This is not about the. This is not about. We care for the family so much. We truly love them, and we care for the child. You see, it's not about that. We were concerned of the fact that there was no consultation and be able to work through all this. We have no
What would have been-
animosity
if-
whatsoever towards.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, Mr. and Mrs. Ray, if there had been a consultation, what would have been a good outcome for you if there had been a consultation?
Well, that's very hard to speculate. But for me personally, I would like to have seen it worked through, you know, with people who are, you know, experts in that field and understanding, you know, gender. Gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and that may well have happened
It's
privately.
very likely to have happened. Schools are supposed to do that.
It wasn't though.
How do you know that?
Sorry,
They
sorry.
were going to put it in place, but it's basically when it just came out. It was
Okay.
just
And when you say-
announced, and then they were like, oh, we will then go down that road of.
And when you say worked through with experts in gender dysphoria, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we have been given a scientific report about this, about the whole gender dysphoria from Christian Concern, to try and understand it. And these are things which are apparently mental disorders. And basically, within the report, I think when I read that, the fact that they said within such young children, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's not something that should be encouraged and supported, because they are just far too young. And I think there's a statistic, isn't well, about
98% of children who have this confusion about what gender they are. 90% of them, once they go through the natural form of puberty, they revert back. Oh yes, I am a boy. I am a girl.
Okay. It's not a mental disorder. It's not a mental disorder. I mean, if you talk to, for example, the Tavistock Clinic, which is an NHS clinic for under 18s in this country, for children, young teenagers, young adults who have gender identity disorder, they will tell you it's not a mental disorder.
Well,
and they take great... It's not a matter of opinion.
It's not a mental disorder.
It's not a matter of opinion. They are doctors, NHS doctors.
But also the report we wrote, we'd been reading, you see, I guess it comes where the report comes from. I mean, the professor of this particular article we read stated the opposite. So I guess it's depending on who you listen to.
Let me read a couple of comments before we wrap our conversation up. This is from... Charles he's emailed to say, I know it's really difficult to understand if you aren't trans, but when you are, and when your internal identity is at odds with what the world sees and tells you, it's incredibly painful. Just being called a female name or a female pronoun for me as a child was painful. Yes, from as young as 6. Being told by your parents, school and society that you're not wrong just for being trans. Learning the lessons young is life-saving. for so many and has no adverse effect on anyone else.
Okay.
Kim says, I really have problems trying to understand what the couple is saying. I certainly don't agree with what they've done, but they seem to be far less understanding and accepting than any child. Very un-Christian-like. And Nicola on Twitter says, it makes me cross. Parents are responsible for educating children too, and these are transferring their prejudice through the generations. It's disgraceful. Carl on Twitter, totally support the couple in withdrawing their child from the school. What happens now in terms of your relationship with the school and whether you want certainly your younger son to go back there?
Well, since we sort of challenged the school on this, and obviously the media hype and everything, and certainly the headline, which was saying about us suing the school, which it's not, it's going to an educational tribunal. The hatred and the comments coming from people has been unbelievable. It's been so helpful for us because we've been people that have been very much involved in the school. We do school assemblies and we really do care and love everyone there, the parents, the staff, all the children, and that for me has been incredibly helpful because it's not something we would ever do, treat others like that. It's a case we wanted dialogue. And we wanted the school to be able to communicate that more clearly. But the letter we received, we felt was just very staunch.
We feel there needs to be more open dialogue. You know, this is on a national, it isn't just about us and the school and our boys. It's just, this is a big thing that is going into school, this gender ideology, and it needs discussion. And there are a lot of people who feel the same way as us, but are scared to speak. And then they say, oh, we're hateful, we're transphobic. But that is not the case at all. We just want to, this is a child protection thing. This is protecting every child and everyone being able to have a voice and a dialogue about this before it's just pushed through.
That's right.
I'm going to pause it there, but thank you so much for your time and for giving us so much time. We appreciate it. Thank you. Nigel and Sally Rowe. Jane Fay, LGBT activist. Final thought from you? A dialogue? Is there any dialogue to be had? What do you think?
Well, I'd love to have a dialogue. I'll just say in church yesterday, the gospel was talking about the supreme commandment being loving your neighbour as yourself. What I'm seeing here, if they didn't want this other child to feel unsafe, all they had to do was say no comment. What I'm seeing is an extremist Christian set, maybe not them, but Christian Concern, as extremist in its own way as people like ISIS. This has got to stop.
Thank you. Jane Fay.